Hi, you guys. Welcome back to Rocket City Yardstead. If you're new, I'm Sarah. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. So we're going to make a pasta dish for dinner tonight. This is one of my favorite pasta dishes. It's actually been quite some time since I've made it, but I realized I had everything I needed to make it. And so I thought I'd bring you guys along and show you. So one of the first ingredients we need to get going is cauliflower. I'm going to roast this at 400 degrees. So this is going to be a roasted cauliflower and salmon pasta dish with a balsamic vinegar sauce on top. It's so good. But we just want to get our cauliflower chopped up into bite-sized pieces. And you could use whatever, that's not where I want to put that. I want to wash this first. You could use whatever kind of pasta you want. I am going to use a gluten-free penne pasta for this. But just whatever floats your fancy. I've made it with spaghetti before and it works just fine. So I do kind of like using a smaller pasta, similar in size to your bites of cauliflower. And then we will roast the salmon up as well. And then that gets flaked into the pasta dish. It's so good. In addition to the cauliflower, we will add onion, some roasted red peppers. It's been long enough since I've made this. I don't think I've ever actually used homegrown peppers before. I have some thawing along with my salmon that I put up earlier this summer. But I normally just made this using the roasted red peppers you can buy in a jar. So that works really well. What else? Some capers, some kalamata olives, some feta. I like to throw the feta into the oven for a little bit because it actually gets a little toasty and adds a little nuttiness to the feta. And it's really simple. This is a pretty quick throw together dinner. The cauliflower roasts for, I guess probably around half an hour, but once you get it in the oven, that's hands off time, right? And then the pasta doesn't take super long to cook, so a relatively quick weeknight meal. Do any of you have sort of unusual weeknight dinners? I don't know if I've ever really seen anything like this. It was just something born of what I had on hand. And it's one of my favorite pasta dishes, but that's, I find personally, one of the best ways to come up with new recipes is just throwing stuff together and seeing what works. Get this last little bit of cauliflower chopped up, and then I can move on to my onions. I would normally use probably one medium or large red onion for this, but these are actually the last of some of my homegrown onions that I grew in the spring. And as you can see, they're tiny. So I have 3 of these that I'm gonna chop up. And these will go on the pan to roast alongside our cauliflower. Okay, onions are on the tray. I'm gonna go ahead and clean up the remnants of my cauliflower here and wash my cauliflower up. I am gonna dry my cauliflower on a towel because we don't want it to steam in the oven. We want it to get nice and roasted, get some brown on it. So want to get as much of that water out of here as possible. This would actually maybe be a good time to, ooh, that colander had quite a bit of water in it. This would actually maybe be a really good time to pull out my salad spinner, but I'm not going to. But I bet we could get a good amount of the water out using the salad spinner. Cauliflower is all nice and dry now. We're just going to load it onto our tray. I'm going to dress this pretty simply because it's going to go into our pasta with a sauce on it. So just a little drizzle of avocado oil, salt, pepper, some garlic powder, and then I actually like some red chili pepper flakes on this, so I'm going to grab those. I forgot the last time I used my red chili pepper flakes, I dropped them and broke the jar. I was only able to salvage a little bit and had to put it in a mason jar. Okay, so now that we've got everything on the tray, I'm just gonna toss everything up. Try and spread it out well. And this is ready to go in the oven. Before our oven's actually even preheated, that's how fast this goes. So now I can move on to the next step. While our oven was finishing preheating, I got a pot of water on the stove to boil. And now we can get our cauliflower and onions in the oven to roast. So these will take probably 25 to 35 minutes. Sometimes I find it just depends on the cauliflower, but we'll start with 25 minutes. We're looking for them to have a nice kind of browned, roasty, caramelized element to them. So we'll just keep an eye on that. When it looks like they have about 10 to 15 minutes left is when I will put the salmon in the oven with them. So the next thing I'm going to prep is some roasted red peppers. I'm not sure how many there are in this bag, but I froze these in August. So we're already getting ready to utilize some of that produce put up from the summer. Let's count. I don't know how many I put in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 roasted red peppers is what I'm going to use today. And I'm going to rinse my hand off. But like I said earlier, this works just fine with store-bought canned roasted red peppers. And it would certainly make things go faster. If you don't have to stand here and chop them, you can just fish them out of a jar with a fork. Plus, you didn't have to grow them and roast them and peel them and all the stuff I did. Now that I've got my peppers chopped up, we are going to get to working on our balsamic topping. I don't know if you'd really call it a pasta sauce. Maybe could even call it a dressing, but either way, it's what we're going to put on our pasta. So I have 3 cloves of garlic here that I'm putting through my mincer. You could chop these really fine by hand if you wanted. I might have overloaded this a little bit, but they were fairly small cloves. Oh, use my knife here. Scrape that off. Okay. Make sure we get all of that yummy garlic. Okay, so then I'm actually going to add a little bit of oregano to this, maybe about a 1/4 teaspoon. I don't want the power to be too overwhelming, but I do want a nice herby flavor. And then we're also going to add a little bit of freeze-dried basil. You could use dry or fresh basil here. It doesn't have to be freeze-dried. That's just what I have on hand. So just going to crush up some of these leaves here. And again, probably about half a teaspoon. I don't really want an overwhelming flavor, just a little bit. Okay. Close up our herbs. I feel like I've mentioned before, but I'm not 100%. Freeze-dried herbs, if you have a freeze dryer and have not used it for herbs, you should. And if you have been interested in a freeze dryer and you're thinking about getting one, freeze-dried herbs are amazing. So we just had chicken soup last night for dinner. I cooked up some rice and it's canned chicken soup that I make with the ball recipe. You guys should let me know if you'd be interested in a video in that. But once I open a jar, I like to add some lemon juice and some dill to it. I just think it gives it a really nice fresh flavor. But I opened up a jar of freeze-dried dill and it smells like you went outside and picked it. It's just that amazing, the freeze-dried herbs. So now on our dressing. 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. I'm going to eyeball this. Ooh, I might have to take a little, I don't know what you call it, the pour thing off of here. This is a really thick balsamic, so it takes a little bit to get it out of there. Okay. So 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar and about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. 1, 2. And as per usual, I tend to eyeball. And then we're going with about 1/3 of a cup of oil here, which is a little bit more than 2.5 ounces. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on my measuring marks on my mason jar here. And then this is ready to shake up. I am not going to add any salt to this. Our other ingredients all are salted. The pasta will have salt in the water while it's boiling. The cauliflower is salted. We are also adding feta, capers, and kalamata olives. Those are all salty. And so I don't want to overdo it. If we get everything tossed together and it tastes like it needs a little bit more, we can add some, but you can't take it away once it's already in there. Now that our pasta sauce is all mixed up, I am just waiting on the cauliflower to finish cooking, our pasta to cook. Our salmon will go in the oven for about 10 minutes, so right at the end of the cauliflower cooking. I will just put that in there on a tray with a little bit of salt and pepper. I am keeping it really simple just because we have so many other flavors going on. But there's something I wanted to say, and my brain just kind of went off in another direction. Oh, I know. So I'm just making 1 salmon fillet tonight. That is not all you would want probably for this whole pasta dish. I'm cooking a pound of pasta. We had that huge head of cauliflower, but there's only 2 of us in our house. And so this will provide us with multiple meals. And I just find that the salmon does better when you eat it freshly cooked. So it only takes, 10 to 15 minutes to cook. So I will cook that up tonight and put it on top of our individual bowls of pasta. And then when we eat leftovers, I'll just cook more salmon fresh. But if you were making this for a family that was going to sit down and eat the whole thing, I would probably say anywhere from 3 to 4 salmon fillets would be a good number for the whole dish. So I just wanted to make sure I clarified that. I am actually going to give our salmon just a little drizzle of oil. If I had some spray oil, I probably would have done it that way, but some salt and pepper. Easy peasy. Our cauliflower is looking fantastic, but I do like it a bit more brown. So we're going to let it cook that extra bit of time. And before we put it in for the last 10 minutes, I'm going to sprinkle it with feta because I like when the feta gets a little roasty as well. You don't need too much, but just a nice little amount. That was probably a quarter cup. We're going to add our kalamata olives. I'm pretty sure with these, we're just going with whatever's left in my jar. Then we're going to add some capers. This is maybe less recipe and more just concept here. I have no real idea of how much of this stuff I'm adding. I just kind of eyeball. I would guess somewhere around a couple tablespoons of capers. And then just so that they have time to heat up in the oven with everything else, I'm going to add our red peppers as well. Try and nestle them down into spots where they're not covering our cauliflower, because we do want it to brown more. Adding the capers, olives, and peppers now is really more about getting these things heated through than it is cooking them. I actually think all on its own, this tray right here would be a fantastic side dish. It's very festive looking. So here's what our veggies look like coming out of the oven. The cauliflower is nice and roasty and everything else is now nice and hot. Our salmon is also done. From this point forward, this is really easy. We're just gonna mix. I'm trying to think what the best way to do this is. We're just gonna mix these roasted veggies into our pasta. I think with the parchment paper, I can just pick this up and dump it in there. Ooh. Just don't touch the pan like I did. Get these last bits of veggies off. You don't want to waste any of this good stuff. All right, so I'm gonna get this all tossed in with our pasta. And add our balsamic. You know what? I'm gonna show you guys what it looks like now, and then we'll add our balsamic sauce. So here's what it looks like before the balsamic sauce. Now we can just pour this over. I have read in the past that these kind of dressings, you want to make sure your pasta is off of the heat, because otherwise it will absorb all of the sauce. And so instead of a sauce texture, you're just going to have noodles that have soaked all of it up, and it'll be drier. I will tell you, it's not necessarily the prettiest dish. That balsamic makes it kind of brown, but oh, the smell right now when that hit. So I'm going to dish some of this up and we'll give it a taste test. before our taste tests, we can't forget to add our salmon. So I'm just gonna flake this up on top. Need another fork. Okay, so there we have it. All right, so let's give this a taste. Get a little salmon. Make sure we get cauliflower and pepper and all the yummies that are in this. Mm. I love this dish. It does need a little bit more salt, so I'm going to add that to this bowl specifically. But I'm also going to add a little bit more into our pot. So we'll mix this up and see if that did the trick. Mm-hmm. It's really good. I love this dish. It's one I've been making for years. I will also say, if you happen to be somebody who's trying to maybe cut back on how much pasta or something like that is, if you're trying to cut your carbs a little bit, the cauliflower really pads out this meal. And so you end up eating less of the pasta itself and still get nice and full. So that's also something to take into consideration. But thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.